Hey guys, welcome to Legacy Now's YouTube channel. This is going to be a good one. I'm here with my buddy Matt Vesling, and he's in the medical sales arena. He went from an associate rep to a full line rep, and we're just going to hear his story. But before we do, please press that subscribe button below, and this YouTube will also be featured on our podcast at the Road to Medical Sales podcast. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, or look for it in the description below. So let's dive right into it. Matt, how did you break into the medical sales arena? Tell us your story.
Sure. So I actually got into medical sales. It was my first job right out of college, which is kind of surprising to a lot of people, especially to the surgeons where I'm in their operating room. But really how it worked for me was I knew I wanted to get into medical sales, and I knew that was probably a long shot, but I was going to go for it anyways. So how I started was just on LinkedIn, just messaging who I could, connecting with who I could in the medical industry, and then as well just exhausting all my options with connections, people I knew, and after all of that, I still got a lot of no's, and I pretty much had gotten to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to work for just a sales company who's going to do some tech sales. That's the job I got from the usual route where you go to a college. Where
Medical sales college, or
no, not even medical sales college, but where you just go to your career fair and meet a bunch of companies, and then I got some offers through there. So that's what I was going to do, tech sales, and then still on the side, pushing LinkedIn, just trying to get that opportunity. And finally, sure enough, I got a hit, and it was a guy that really, we went to coffee and we just clicked, and he gave me a shot. So yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm curious, what are your recommendations for others that are just trying to get that interview?
Sure.
And maybe more so, what should they not do when they're reaching out to people?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
what should they do?
So I think we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but just sending out your resume is enough. We're in an information age now where there's a lot of stuff. It's very easy to just press a button and send your resume over. So if you can do it, anybody can. You got to go above and beyond and really reach out on a personal level. And some people don't want to hear that, but that's what our job is anyways as medical sales professionals, is getting your point across to people who probably don't want to hear it from you. So
Yeah.
that's the number one thing I would say, kind of for people trying to break in, is just make yourself different from what everyone else is doing. Think outside the box. How are you going to make that personal connection, and why is this person going to go out of their way to help you?
I agree. And I related back to the sales process as well. So whenever I'm going in there, I try to bring an emotional connection to the table.
Yep.
And let them know that I'm really grateful to be there, and bring a lot of energy and passion to the table. But
Absolutely.
I'm also asking them, I'd really be grateful if you give me the opportunity to trial me in the operating room, something of that nature.
Sure.
But bringing that same kind of vibe into reaching out to people on
Sure.
LinkedIn is just going to pull the heartstrings of those people, and they may give you an opportunity.
Sure. Yep.
Yep. So anything during the interview process that you did differently? Maybe a lot of it came natural, but
Yeah, I would say a lot of it came natural. I really enjoy interviewing and asking questions about a company, and then figuring out how I can kind of plug and play my asset or my skill set to be an asset for the company.
yeah.
But I would say that what helped me, it was tough because I didn't have any sales experience really. I mean, I had 3 internships throughout college that I really I had come into these companies and actually made an impact, and so I had stories for each of the 3 of how I really made an impact on sometimes national levels of these companies. And so having that story and that kind of wake of success just from my 3 internships really helped me to kind of be successful in these interviews.
Yeah. So you use storytelling and really kind of painted the picture.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you do the infamous interview in front of the camera?
I didn't. I was grandfathered in before that, I guess.
Awesome.
I think probably six to 8 months after they hired me, that was implemented. So I'm glad, because I don't do well in front of a camera usually.
That's awesome. But storytelling is huge.
Yeah.
You've got to relate it to your skill set, even if your skill set is small.
Yeah.
Right? So in addition to that, as we're kind of going through your progression. So you became an associate rep. What was that experience like for those that are about to become an associate rep out there in the field?
It was pretty similar to pledging a fraternity, No. But you start out kind of bottom of the totem pole, right? Like you don't have, unless you've been hired as an associate from a different company where you had some medical background or sales background, you're usually coming into an associate role because you don't have that medical background. So you are lost. I mean, essentially lost. And the way you find your way is by doing all of the work that the reps don't want to do, and slowly building up your experience from there until the point where they can trust you with things that really matter.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my initial experience as an associate, and then obviously once you guys started to gain trust in me, I was able to kind of take on more rep roles and take on more important roles in the company versus just running retractors at night, things like that. But
super important part of the team.
Oh, for sure.
To make sure everything goes smoothly.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right retractors in the room, that surgeon's going to be upset, and
Absolutely.
You could lose that business.
You can lose it fast. Yep.
And plus, you're starting to engage with the surgeons. You're getting to know them on a personal level and starting to feel what it's like to communicate with them, because they're smart dudes, and every one of them has different personalities, right? Yeah. So you moved up the ladder pretty quick. I think you were promoted under a year to a sales rep, which is amazing. And I'm sure there's a lot of associate reps out there, or even people that haven't broken in yet, that want to make a fast transition from an associate rep to a full line rep.
Yeah.
What do you think they should do?
Well, I'd say for your mental health, take your time.
Yeah.
Because jumping into the role that quickly from associate to rep definitely was challenging, and I had many sleepless nights. I checked myself into the ER one time thinking I was having a heart attack, but I was just stressed out. So
I didn't know that.
So, it's definitely very stressful, but I would say to move up the ladder that fast, you've really just got to be a hard worker. I mean, at the very least, that's what you got to be. You got to be that person where if your reps, as you're an ASR, if your reps call you, you pick up the phone, no questions asked. What do you need? I'll handle it. You got to be that person first and foremost. Then from there, you can start to learn maybe some kind of products that are on the periphery, like not the main products that the rep sells every single day. But like for me, it was our radial head and our biologics that I started realizing that our reps that were so focused on shoulders, they didn't really have the full all around knowledge of these other products. So I was like, all right, well, I'll be that guy that just knows all the ins and outs of those products, so that my reps need me. They got to call me when they have questions about these other products. So I may not be the shoulder guy right away, but I'll be the elbow guy, So pick something like that to focus on.
I think that led to your fast progression because the manager saw that you were resourceful, you're hardworking as heck, and just wanted to give you an opportunity because you had been in the trenches and you'd worked so hard, you kind of deserved it, right?
Yeah, I felt that way.
You never know these opportunities just from attrition, just from people leaving, you just open up, or you work so hard, the manager just wants to make an opportunity for you. I mean, it's amazing what this industry can provide if you just...
That is another way that it can happen, and I feel like we really haven't seen that yet with our team, but if an associate rep goes out and just kicks butt and builds a territory for themselves, like, what is your manager going to do? Tell you that's not your territory?
Exactly.
You can build it for yourself.
Yeah.
Now, when you're an associate, you usually have a ton of other stuff going on, and you don't really have the full time to do that. But that is another way that you can kind of progress quickly. So.
And then you crushed it as a rep. I mean, you were number 8, I think, in the nation for biologic sales, and you've got a big territory. I think it's pretty massive, if I'm right. And how do you control that? What's different about it? And, for those that are maybe going right into that rep role and they're a little bit scared and not sure how to handle it, any recommendations for them?
So for me, it was nice actually because if you remember, I went down to Tucson first, which is a little bit of a smaller, more manageable territory. So
Bear down.
It was kind of, bear down. It was kind of like a fast track in how to be a rep. It was like how to be a rep 101 when I went down to Tucson. I was alone down there with no help really. Manager would drive down every once in a while, but I really was just alone down there trying to figure out how to run a territory. But luckily it wasn't too crazy, a couple cases a week. Now I'm in a position where it's multiple cases a day, lots of moving parts, a lot of different personalities. Like you said, all my doctors have different personalities. I've got to figure out how to manage all of those and keep them all happy. So for someone that's just coming into that role, I would just say take a step back, write things down and keep really, really good notes, because you may think you'll remember how one surgeon does their case and their whole surgical flow, and then you go do 2 more cases with the next guy, and then the one that you thought you knew books a case, and you go in there and you start running it like the other surgeon. They're like, what the heck's going on here? And it really makes for a bad case. So take extensive notes, make sure you know what all your surgeons prefer, where they're at in what products they use. I mean, we've got old products and new products. Some surgeons, you think you can order in a new product, and then they're like, what the heck is this? I don't use this. So it's good to have those conversations with your surgeons and really make sure you have it all ironed out, what their preferences are.
That's such a good point. You can start doing that as an associate rep, start
absolutely.
taking notes and start prepping yourself.
Yep.
But it's such a transfer of responsibility. So you're just covering cases, making sure that the senior rep is taken care of as an associate. But when you become the rep, there's a little bit more to it. You're doing that, but you're also trying to make sure the relationship is strong.
Right.
You're building a deeper relationship with these surgeons. And,
Absolutely.
And you've done what I do as well. And of course, within the company boundaries of expensing, but you've taken your doctors out to dinner for business purposes. And sometimes that adds to building a good relationship with the doc, right?
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
yeah, building that personal relationship is huge too with your doctors. Yeah. I was just at a meeting today with one of our reps, and we built some great rapport, having a really long conversation, personal conversation, not pertaining to the surgical stuff at all. And we walked away, and he looked at me and he goes, "That was awesome. I feel so much more comfortable with my position now. With it's one of his biggest surgeons that he's kind of taken on. So having that personal connection really can make things a huge difference."
Yeah. So. Yeah. Some of the best reps that I know personally go to dinner with their doctors, and they spend better half of the first 30 minutes just building rapport, just getting to know them on a personal level. Of course, there's a time and a place for the business, but so this is my favorite part. What about your funniest story in the operating room or just in medical sales in general?
So I warned you, this is one of, it might be close to home, because it was actually Scott's surgeon, and I was an ASR covering for him. And this was when I was pretty new. I was pretty green, and I knew some things about some products, but I would by no means call myself an expert. And actually the product that I was covering, I really had never got my hands on it. I read through the surgical technique, the night before, because I found out the night before I was going to be covering it. And that was pretty much it. So I went in, and it's we're doing a rotator cuff repair with a specific product, and it's just not working. We're doing everything by the book. I'm checking all his boxes. I'm telling him all the steps, and it's just not grabbing what it was supposed to like it should. And so I made some calls. We went through the progression again. Didn't work. So he trashed it, and he goes, "Okay, bring me your suture anchors." And I didn't even know we had suture anchors on the shelf. So I'm like, great. I open up the box, and they're just all looking at me like, all right, what do we do next?
What next?
And I'm like, I don't know. Don't you guys use suture anchors a lot? They're like, yeah, but we've never seen these before. And I'm like, well, why'd you ask for it?
Ours are more complicated too. Yeah.
Right. They are a little more complicated. So at this point, I'm mad, because I'm like, why did my company put me in this situation where I've never been trained on this before? But anyways, I'm still trying to get through it. But the scrub tech looks at me, and he's like, "Hey, I pull this, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." Scrub tech knows what he's doing. He's used suture anchors before. So I'm like, "Yeah, pull that." And then, it all looks good. And then sure enough, it's still not working. So I make a few calls, and Joey, one of our guys, goes, "Hey, yeah, you got to put the suture through the loop. There's a big loop on the back end." And I'm looking at it, and the doctor's looking at it, and he's like, "There's no freaking loop. There's no loop." And sure enough, the loop is sitting on the back table. It's the part that I nodded at the scrub tech that he could rip off.
Oh no!
And I had nodded like in agreement, like, yeah, rip it off, because I thought he knew what he was doing. And oh man, it was bad. So we had to waste that implant, open up a new one, and do it fresh. So end result of the case was fine, but man, I was embarrassed and I was like frustrated with the company. And I learned some good lessons that day. Like the number one lesson I learned was never go into a case underprepared. You always be over-prepared, even if there's like a 2% chance that you're gonna use a specific product. Know your stuff. Yeah. And then second kind of thing I learned was just don't be that guy who you feel like you have to say yes for the case to progress quicker. They would much rather you say, "Hey, hold on, I'm not sure exactly. Let me make this call before I say yes." That way we don't burn a product, or cost a lot more time and money.
And you'll lose credibility if you say, yes, do this. And
Right. So yeah, that was definitely my most embarrassing story. Luckily it was with a really cool surgeon, and he kind of forgave me and we laughed it off. But yeah, man, it was.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think we ate the cost of that product.
Right. Yeah. And that's a really good thing to do. Surgeons appreciate that when it's clearly your fault. Just eat the cost.
Yeah. With manager approval, of course. But yeah, man. And I was just having this conversation with somebody over the phone that I'm coaching about what to do to prep yourself to go cover cases. And I was like, one of the biggest things that you can do is try to get a mentor. Of course, watch the surgical techniques and go on ViewMedi and familiarize yourself with the technique, but also get a good mentor and just ask. Say, hey, what is the most difficult part about this procedure, or what could go wrong? That's a great question to ask.
Yeah.
What could go wrong here, and how do you troubleshoot it? And I used to do that when I was starting out, and I would write all that down on a note card, and you do it as well.
Yep.
You have the note card listed out with bulletins of what comes next, so that you're constantly thinking 2 to 3 steps ahead of the time. But knowing what could hit the fan and how to recover from it is crucial.
That's what makes a good rep. I mean, I've always said anybody can learn, steps. It's like putting together Legos, right? Anybody can just learn, 12 steps in a row. This is what you do. This is what you do. This is what you do. It's when the crap hits the fan that you're like, okay, now am I a good rep? Do I know what I'm doing? Do I know my anatomy? Do I know how my implants and different instruments are meant to help get me out of this situation?
Yeah.
That's what makes a rep that surgeons trust, not just telling them what comes next.
Exactly. And even on top of that, if you have a hole in your tray, do you have another solution? Can you figure out another solution?
Can we do this case? That's what they'll ask the rep, that before they ask the surgeon, can we do this case? And you're like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. And then on top, even more, if there's something the doctor needs and it's not a part of your toolkit, do you know where it's at in the hospital?
Right.
Like, can you find it?
Right.
That's just being a true asset and a part of the team there.
And that comes with time too. It's hard because you get into your rep role and you see like another rep, maybe even a competitive rep, and he knows his way around the hospital. He knows where everything is, sutures, all that kind of stuff. You're like, man, I wish I was that guy. It's like, it'll come with time. I'm still getting to that point but that's how you become really resourceful.
I always say it comes from a humble soul, right? You've got to be willing to ask. If you are in a hospital for the first time, and I've been there where, guys are usually inherently don't want to ask for directions, and I can't find my way to the damn rep kiosk, and I just keep going down hallway to hallway. Thunderbird is one of those where I would just get lost. Yeah. But if you just ask somebody for directions,
point you in the right direction.
They'll put you there, and so don't be afraid to ask. So Matt, what about some final words for those that are just trying to move up fast in this industry, go from an associate rep to a rep role quickly, or just to break into this industry in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of my final words would just be to kind of circle it all back to the work ethic. Like, this industry is not for the faint of heart. It's a lot of long hours. It's a lot of sacrifices, from your personal life. There's been countless times where I've gotten calls, when I'm either planning on doing something fun on a Saturday night, or it's Sunday and I realize I screwed up, and Friday I forgot to set something, and now my case is on Monday, and it needs to be done. So I've had to miss out on a lot of things too. So you have to understand that comes with the territory, right? And if you accept that and you're excited by that, and you want to work hard, you're going to do just fine.
Yeah. I love that, man. So thank you so much, Matt, for coming on.
Of course, this was a blast.
All right, guys, you know the drill. Please go below and press subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. And thank you so much for tuning into Legacy Now YouTube channel. This will also be on the podcast at the Road to Medical Sales podcast, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And stay hungry out there, and happy selling.